Commander Yoon-ji had 12 warships against an enemy fleet of hundreds. The numbers meant certain death, but she refused to surrender. Her destroyer, the ESC Defiance, led hit-and-run attacks against the alien blockade. They would strike fast, destroy one or two enemy ships, then run before the Council forces could respond. It was buying time, nothing more. Time for Earth civilians to evacuate into the underground bunkers that had been built decades ago, back when humanity feared nuclear war with itself. The alien bombardment had begun. Energy beams fell from the sky like rain, striking military bases and weapons factories. Explosions lit up the night across every continent. New Seoul burned. Tokyo's skyline collapsed into rubble. London's ancient streets filled with smoke and fire. Millions died in the first hours, then tens of millions, then hundreds of millions. The Council wasn't trying to conquer Earth. They were trying to break humanity's spirit, to force surrender through terror. But humans don't break easily. In the underground cities, families huddled together in the darkness. They listened to emergency broadcasts, heard the reports of destruction above. Children cried. Adults prayed to whatever gods they believed in. But nobody talked about surrender. Something deeper than fear was growing in the hearts of humanity. It was rage, cold and patient. The kind of anger that doesn't explode but instead waits, plans, and remembers. Yoon Ji-hee's tactical officer reported another alien cruiser destroyed, but the cost was heavy. The Defiance had taken serious damage. 2 of her 12 ships were gone, blown apart by enemy fire. The remaining crews were exhausted, running on stimulants and desperation. But they kept fighting because that's what humans do. They keep fighting until there's nothing left to fight with. Far across the galaxy, in the empty Outer Rim territories, Admiral Park Dae-ho stared at his command screens in disbelief. The region was supposed to be full of pirate activity. That's what the Council had said. That's why Earth's fleet had been sent here. But the sensors showed nothing. No pirates, no enemy ships, no threats at all. Just empty space and distant stars. Run another full scan, Park ordered his crew. There must be something here. Check for hidden bases, cloaked vessels, anything. The results came back the same. Nothing. The Outer Rim was peaceful and quiet. There were no pirates. There had never been pirates. It was all a lie. Then the emergency transmission arrived from Earth. The quantum relay system lit up with desperate signals, fragmented and damaged by distance and interference. Park's communications officer played the message on the main screen. Everyone on the bridge watched in silence as Earth burned. The footage showed alien warships in orbit around humanity's homeworld. It showed cities exploding, orbital stations destroyed, millions of people dying. The Council forces had transmitted the bombardment footage deliberately, sending it across the galaxy so Park's fleet would see what was happening. It was meant to break their morale, to make them surrender without a fight. Captain Lee Taeyang watched from his own bridge aboard the Indomitable. He saw his home city of Busan explode under alien fire. His parents lived there. His sister worked in the coastal district. He watched the place where he was born turn into a crater of molten glass. His hands gripped the armrests of his command chair so hard that his knuckles turned white. Around him, his crew was crying. Some were screaming. Others just stared at the screens in shock. This wasn't supposed to happen. They were the good guys. They were helping the galaxy. They had trusted the Council, and now their families were dying while they were trapped thousands of light years away, sent on a fake mission to leave Earth defenseless. Park Dae-ho felt something break inside himself. Not his will or his courage, but something else, the part of him that believed in rules, in honor, in the idea that civilized species could resolve their differences peacefully. That part died as he watched Earth burn. What replaced it was colder and harder, a certainty that would shape everything that followed. He called an emergency meeting of all fleet commanders. Every captain in the fleet gathered aboard the Indomitable, their faces appearing on holographic displays around the conference room. Park saw his own pain reflected in their eyes. They had all lost someone. They were all watching their world die from too far away to help. The Council betrayed us, Park said quietly. His voice was calm, which somehow made the words more frightening. They planned this from the beginning. They sent us away so they could attack Earth without opposition. They're trying to exterminate humanity. We need to surrender, one captain said, a young woman named Kim Somin whose entire family was on Earth. If we give up, maybe they'll stop the bombardment. Maybe they'll spare the civilians. Park shook his head. The Council won't stop. They fear what we might become. They want us gone, or at least broken so completely that we'll never be a threat again. Surrendering won't save anyone. It will only let them win without a fight. Then what do we do? Captain Li Taiyang asked. His voice was rough with grief. We're 3 weeks from Earth at maximum speed. By the time we get there, everyone might be dead. Not everyone, Park said. Commander Yoon is still fighting. So are millions of civilians in the underground shelters. They're holding on because they believe we're coming back. And we are. We're going home. And we're going to make the Council pay for every human life they've taken. Director Kang Mirai had accompanied the fleet to the outer rim. She stepped forward now, her tablet displaying tactical data. I've been analyzing the Council's fleet composition. They committed 7 species to the attack on Earth. That means they pulled forces from across the galaxy. Their home systems are less defended than normal. You're suggesting we attack their worlds? Another captain asked, horrified. I'm suggesting we do to them what they're doing to us, Kang replied coldly. The Council showed us the rules of this war. There are no rules. No mercy, no restraint. If we want to survive, we need to become something they fear more than they fear what we might become. Park called for a vote. Should they return to Earth and try to break the blockade, knowing it might be a suicide mission? Or should they scatter, hide in deep space, preserve what remained of humanity's fleet until a better opportunity arose? Every single captain voted to return home. Not one voice suggested running or hiding. They would go back to Earth, outnumbered and outgunned, and they would fight until they won or died trying. Because they were human, and humans don't abandon their families. The return journey became 3 weeks of preparation. Engineer Han Seok led teams throughout the fleet, modifying weapon systems and pushing reactors beyond their safety limits. They weren't planning to survive this battle. They were planning to take as many enemies with them as possible. Han designed kamikaze drones, thousands of small unmanned ships loaded with antimatter warheads. They would launch ahead of the fleet, overwhelm the enemy's point defenses, and create chaos in the Council's formation. It was brutal, efficient, and utterly ruthless. Commander Bae Sujin, the fleet's weapons specialist, developed something even worse. She had been working on nanomachine technology before the war, tiny robots that could repair ship damage at the molecular level. Now she reprogrammed them for destruction. The Reaper nanomachines would dissolve enemy hulls, turning massive warships into clouds of disassociated atoms in minutes. It violated every treaty humanity had signed about weapon development. Bae didn't care anymore. Treaties were for species that didn't try to commit genocide. Captain Li Taiyang volunteered the Indomitable to lead the assault. His ship was the strongest, the most heavily armed, and the newest. It would punch through the enemy blockade or be destroyed in the attempt. He recorded final messages to family members who might already be dead. In the messages, he didn't say goodbye. He said he was coming home and he was bringing vengeance with him. On Earth, Commander Yoon Ji-hye was down to 7 ships. The alien blockade was tightening. Soon there would be no room left to maneuver, no surprise attacks possible. Her crew was exhausted beyond human limits. The Defiance had taken so much damage that every system was failing. Engineering teams had to route power through damaged circuits just to keep the weapons online. But then something changed. The civilian government broadcast a message from the underground cities. It was simple and defiant. We will not surrender. We will not submit. Humanity stands together. Our fleet is coming home, and when they arrive, the Council will learn what happens when you corner a human. The broadcast reached the Council fleet. The alien commanders couldn't understand it. The humans were beaten. Their cities were destroyed. Their military was scattered. Why weren't they begging for mercy? The Vrin Admiral sent a final ultimatum. Surrender in 24 hours or Earth would be sterilized completely. Every living thing on the planet would be exterminated. The atmosphere itself would be burned away, leaving nothing but a dead rock circling the sun. Yoon Ji-hye's response was to attack the alien flagship. Her 7 remaining ships charged straight at the heart of the enemy fleet. It was suicide, but it bought more time. More hours for civilians to reach safety. More time for Admiral Park's fleet to get closer to Earth. The Defiance took a direct hit to the reactor. Yoon ordered the crew to evacuate, but she stayed on the bridge, manually controlling the dying ship. He Council fleet detected the human approach with satisfaction rather than fear. Their admiral, a Vrin commander whose name translated roughly as Swift Death, studied the tactical displays with confident clicks of his mandibles. The humans were outnumbered 3 to 1. They had traveled for weeks while their homeworld burned. They must be exhausted, desperate, and ready to break. Maintain formation, Swift Death ordered his fleet. Let them come. We'll destroy them quickly and finish the extermination of Earth. This species will be a lesson to the galaxy about what happens to aggressive newcomers. The Kelthera Archon, Velmoth observed from his command ship. His crystalline body pulsed with satisfied blue light. The humans had been troublesome, developing technology too quickly, expanding too aggressively. Now the problem would be solved. In a few hours, humanity would be extinct, and the galaxy would return to proper order under Council control. They were so certain of victory that they never considered the possibility that they had made a terrible mistake. Admiral Park Daho watched his fleet form up for battle. Every ship was ready. Every weapon was armed. Every crew member knew this might be their last fight. But if they were going to die, they would make it count. They would make the Council remember the cost of attacking Earth. Launch the drones, Park ordered quietly. From the human fleet, thousands of small unmanned ships burst forward, accelerating to incredible speeds. Engineer Han Seok had built them to be fast, maneuverable, and loaded with antimatter warheads powerful enough to crack open a battleship. The Council's point defense systems opened fire immediately, filling space with laser beams and explosive rounds. But there were too many drones. The alien defenses shot down hundreds, then thousands, but more kept coming. They swarmed around Council ships like angry insects, seeking weak points in shields and armor. When they struck, they exploded with blinding force. The first Council ship to die was a Vryn cruiser. 3 drones hit it simultaneously, and the combined antimatter explosions tore the vessel apart. Debris and bodies spun away into space. Then another ship exploded. And another. Within 5 minutes, the Council fleet had lost 47 vessels. Swift Death stared at his screens in disbelief. How did the humans have so many drones? Where did they get antimatter weapons? The intelligence report said Earth's technology was inferior to Council standards. But these weapons were devastatingly effective. All ships advance and engage, Swift Death ordered. Destroy them quickly before they can launch more drones. The Council fleet surged forward, hundreds of warships moving to envelope the smaller human force. It should have been a simple victory. But the humans weren't fighting like a cornered enemy trying to escape. They were fighting like predators defending their territory. Captain Li Taeyang stood on the bridge of the Indomitable, watching the enemy fleet approach. Around him, 20 other dreadnoughts formed a spearhead formation. These were humanity's heaviest warships, designed to break through enemy lines and create chaos in their formations. All power to forward shields, Taeyang ordered. Prepare nuclear-tipped missiles. Target the Vryn flagship. His weapons officer looked up in shock. Sir, we signed treaties against using nuclear weapons in space combat. The Council killed 3 billion people on Earth, Taeyang replied coldly. They don't get to hide behind our treaties anymore. Fire when ready. The Indomitable and its sister ships unleashed everything they had. Nuclear missiles streaked across space, followed by particle beams, railgun rounds, and laser fire. The amount of firepower was staggering. The human dreadnoughts had been holding back their full capabilities for years, not wanting to alarm the Council with how advanced their weapons really were. Now there was no reason to hide anymore. The Vryn flagship's shields collapsed under the assault. Nuclear explosions rippled across its hull, tearing through armor and ripping apart internal compartments. Swift Death had time for one final thought before his command center exploded around him. The thought was simply, what are they? But the Vryn flagship's destruction cost humanity dearly. The Indomitable had pushed too far into the enemy formation. Alien ships surrounded it from all sides, their weapons focusing fire on the mighty dreadnought. Captain Taeyang felt his ship shudder as energy beams burned through the hull. Shields failing, his tactical officer shouted. We've lost engines 3 and 4. Hull breaches on all decks. Taeyang looked at the tactical display. His ship was dying, but the Vryn flagship was still there, still fighting despite the damage. He made his decision in a heartbeat. All hands evacuate to the emergency pods now. He sealed the bridge doors and took manual control of the ship. The Indomitable's crew fought to leave their posts, knowing what their captain planned. Many stayed anyway, refusing to abandon their commander. Taeyang aimed his dying ship at the enemy flagship and pushed the remaining engines to maximum. The Indomitable accelerated, armor burning away, systems exploding throughout the hull. The Vryn tried to move away, but they were too slow. 3 kilometers of human warship slammed into the alien flagship at tremendous speed. The collision released more energy than 1,000 nuclear bombs. Both ships vanished in a flash of white light. Captain Li Taeyang and the Vrin commander died together, along with tens of thousands of crew from both sides. But the human captain died satisfied, knowing he had taken the enemy leader with him. Admiral Park watched the explosion from his command ship. He felt a moment of grief for Taeyang, a good officer and a brave man. But there was no time for mourning. The battle was far from over. "Deploy the Reaper protocol," Park ordered. Commander Bae Sujin had been waiting for this command. From her weapons control station, she activated the nanomachine swarms. Containers opened throughout the human fleet, releasing clouds of microscopic machines into space. They looked like dust, invisible to the naked eye, but they spread quickly toward the enemy fleet. The Kelthera ships were the first to encounter the Reaper nanomachines. The tiny robots landed on crystalline hulls and immediately began their work. They broke molecular bonds, dissolved atomic structures, turned solid matter into gas. The Kelthera watched in horror as their beautiful crystal ships began to disintegrate. One moment a warship was there, weapons firing, shields glowing. The next moment it was falling apart, becoming a cloud of atoms that scattered in the solar wind. Thousands of Kelthera died without even understanding what was killing them. Their screams filled the communication channels, desperate pleas for help that no one could answer. The other council species saw what was happening and tried to retreat, but the nanomachines spread faster than ships could run. They infected one vessel after another, dissolving hulls, destroying systems, killing crews. It was a nightmare weapon, something that violated every rule of civilized warfare. But the council had come to Earth to commit genocide. They had forfeited the right to complain about cruel weapons. Archon Velmoth broadcast a message to the human fleet. His voice was desperate, nothing like the confident tone from before. "We surrender. Please stop the attack. We surrender." Admiral Park's response was cold and simple. "No." The battle raged for 18 hours. The council fleet broke apart, individual ships trying to escape in any direction, but the humans hunted them down relentlessly. Every enemy vessel that tried to run was chased and destroyed. Every escape pod was targeted. Every distress signal was ignored. Commander Bae Sujin watched the slaughter from her station. She felt nothing. No guilt, no remorse, no satisfaction. Just emptiness. The council had tried to exterminate humanity. Now humanity was returning the favor. It was simple mathematics, an equation of survival. As the battle reached its final hours, new ships appeared on the scanners. The remaining vessels of Earth's home defense force, the few ships that had survived the initial attack, emerged from hiding. They were battered and damaged, held together by emergency repairs and desperate courage, but they were still fighting. These ships trapped the fleeing council forces in a pincer movement. The aliens had nowhere to run. They were caught between the returning fleet and Earth's defenders. One by one, the enemy ships were destroyed. Some tried to surrender. Some tried to fight. It made no difference. The humans showed no mercy. By the time the sun rose over what remained of Earth's cities, the battle was over. Not a single council ship had escaped the Sol system. Thousands of alien vessels floated in space as debris. Millions of enemy soldiers were dead. The council's great fleet, the combined forces of 7 species, had been utterly destroyed. But victory came with terrible cost. 60% of Earth's fleet was gone. Dozens of ships had been destroyed. Tens of thousands of human crew members killed in action. The Indomitable and Captain Taeyang were just one loss among many. Earth itself was scarred and burning. Billions dead, entire cities reduced to radioactive craters. Admiral Park stood on his bridge, looking at Earth through the view screen. The planet was still beautiful from space. White clouds and blue oceans, but he knew the reality beneath. His homeworld had been devastated. Generations would pass before the damage could be repaired. Director Kang Mirai approached him with a tablet displaying intercepted communications. Her face was grim. "Admiral, we're picking up transmissions from beyond the Sol system. The Council is..." Admiral Park Daeho stood before the cameras in what remained of Earth's command center. Behind him, the walls still showed scorch marks from the alien attack. The building had been partially destroyed, then hastily repaired. It was a fitting place to deliver his message to the galaxy. The broadcast would reach every council world, every neutral species, every listening post in known space. Park wanted everyone to hear what came next. He wanted them to understand that humanity had changed, that the peaceful explorers who once sought friendship were gone, replaced by something harder and colder. The Galactic Council tried to exterminate humanity, Park began, his voice calm but filled with barely controlled rage. They attacked our homeworld. They murdered billions of innocent civilians. They tried to end our species because they feared what we might become. They failed. Now we will show the galaxy what happens when you awaken something you cannot control. He paused, letting his words sink in across light years of space. This is not revenge. This is survival. Every council species that participated in the attack on Earth will pay the price. Every world that supported this genocide will face consequences. We are coming, and we will not stop until the council is destroyed completely. To the species that stood by and watched, consider this a warning. To those who supplied weapons or intelligence to our enemies, we know who you are. And to the council leaders who ordered this attack, your days are numbered. The transmission ended. Across the galaxy, reactions ranged from shock to fear to secret satisfaction. Some species, those who had suffered under council rule, quietly celebrated humanity's defiance. Others scrambled to fortify their defenses, terrified of becoming targets themselves. On Earth, the surviving population threw themselves into the war effort with desperate energy. Engineer Han Seok led the reconstruction of industrial facilities. Factories that once produced civilian goods were converted to military production. Underground facilities expanded, digging deeper into Earth's crust, creating manufacturing centers that could survive orbital bombardment. The people worked 18-hour days. Children too young to fight learned to operate machinery. Elderly citizens who remembered peacetime helped grow food in underground farms. Everyone contributed because everyone understood that this was a war for survival. If humanity lost, there would be no second chance. Director Kang Mirai's intelligence network identified priority targets across council space: supply depots, shipyards, manufacturing centers, and civilian infrastructure. The strategy was brutal but necessary. Humanity needed to break the council's ability to wage war, and that meant targeting everything that supported their military machine. Lieutenant Shin Yubin, a young tactical officer who had survived the Battle of Sol, proposed what she called the Scorched Galaxy Doctrine. The idea was simple and terrible. Don't just defeat the council militarily. Destroy their capacity to rebuild. Eliminate their industrial base. Collapse their economies. Leave them unable to threaten humanity ever again. Admiral Park reviewed the proposal in his office. It was genocide on a massive scale. The deliberate destruction of entire civilizations. It violated every principle he had once believed in, every rule of warfare he had been taught. But Earth was scarred and burning. 3 billion people were dead. His family was dead. The time for principles had passed. Implement it, Park ordered. Target everything. Show no mercy. The first strike came 3 weeks after the Battle of Sol. The target was Vrinthax, homeworld of the Vryn, the insect species whose leaders had ordered the attack on Earth. Their planet was located in a densely populated star system, surrounded by colonies and trading stations. The human fleet arrived without warning. They didn't bother with demands for surrender or attempts at negotiation. Commander Bei Sujin simply deployed the atmospheric incinerators, weapons designed for one purpose: to set a planet's atmosphere on fire. The devices fell through Vrinthax's sky like silver rain. When they activated, they triggered a chemical reaction in the oxygen-rich air. Flames spread across the entire planet in less than an hour. Cities burned. Forests became infernos. The oceans themselves began to boil. 4 billion Vryn died in those flames, their bodies reduced to ash that mixed with the smoke filling the sky. The human fleet broadcast footage of the burning world to every corner of the galaxy. They wanted everyone to see what happened to species that attacked Earth. They wanted the council to understand that this was just the beginning. On the council station, the surviving leaders watched the footage in horror. Archon Velmoth of the Kelthura had believed humans were dangerous because of their rapid technological development. Now he understood that the real danger was something deeper, something primal. Humans fought without restraint when their survival was threatened. They became monsters that even monsters feared. "We must negotiate," Velmoth said to the emergency council meeting. "The humans are out of control. They'll destroy everything if we don't find a way to stop them." "Negotiate?" spat the Dralthi representative, a mammalian species that had been enslaved by the Kelthera for centuries. "You started this war. You tried to exterminate an entire species. Now you want mercy? The humans are doing to you what you've done to dozens of other species throughout history. The difference is, the humans are strong enough to make you pay." The Dralthi representative stood and left the chamber. Within days, the Dralthi sent a secret message to Earth, offering an alliance. They would provide intelligence on Council fleet movements and supply lines in exchange for their freedom from Kelthera control. Ambassador O Yunji, who had replaced the imprisoned Choi Hana, negotiated the agreement personally. Other oppressed species followed. The Torvani, the Helix, the Kren, all species that had suffered under Council domination. They saw humanity's war as an opportunity for liberation. They provided information, sabotaged Council ships, and in some cases, openly rebelled against their former masters. The Council was fracturing, torn apart by internal conflicts and external pressure. But they still had one advantage: the planet-killer dreadnoughts, massive vessels capable of destroying worlds with a single shot. The Kelthera had 7 of these, ships kept in reserve for the most extreme situations. Now they deployed them with a single target in mind: Earth. The planet killers jumped into Earth's solar system with an escort of 200 warships. They planned to finish what the First Fleet had started, to reduce Earth to debris and ensure humanity could never threaten anyone again. But Earth was ready this time. Fleet Commander Yoon Ji-hye, promoted after her heroic sacrifice had somehow failed to kill her when a rescue ship found her escape pod, led the defense. The orbital platforms around Earth had been rebuilt and reinforced with salvaged alien technology. The moon's surface was covered with massive railgun batteries. Mars had been turned into a fortress, its industrial centers producing weapons around the clock. The Battle of Earth, the second engagement, lasted 3 days. The planet killers were enormous and powerful, but they were also slow and vulnerable at close range. Human ships swarmed around them like wolves attacking bears, targeting weak points, overwhelming shields with concentrated fire. Commander Bae Sujin used the Reaper nanomachines again, but the Kelthera had developed countermeasures. The battle became a grinding slugfest. Ships exchanging fire at point-blank range, casualties mounting on both sides. Mars took several direct hits, the bombardment destroying underground cities and killing millions. Luna Base was completely obliterated, the moon's surface scarred by massive craters. But Earth survived. 5 of the 7 planet killers were destroyed. The remaining 2 retreated with their escort, damaged and desperate. The Council had thrown their best punch and failed to land a killing blow. Now they were vulnerable, and humanity was coming for them. Admiral Park Dae-ho knew the war could only end one way now: total annihilation of the Council's ability to wage war, not just their military but everything that supported it: their shipyards, their factories, their agricultural centers, their populations. Everything had to be destroyed to ensure they could never threaten Earth again. "Launch the final campaign," Park ordered. "Target every Council homeworld. Use every weapon we have. I want their civilizations erased." Engineer Han Seok had spent months developing new weapons for this moment. Genesis bombs, devices that could terraform a planet in reverse, turning lush worlds into barren wastelands. Bioweapons designed to target specific alien physiologies. Viruses that killed one species while leaving others untouched. Radiation bombs that would contaminate worlds for thousands of years. These weapons were deployed across Council space. 5 Council homeworlds were hit by Genesis bombs, their atmospheres poisoned, their water supplies contaminated, their ecosystems collapsed. Trillions of civilians died, not in the quick fire of battle, but in the slow agony of starvation and disease as their worlds became unable to support life. The galaxy watched in horror. Some species condemned humanity as worse than the Council had ever been. Others understood that this was what happened when you tried to exterminate an entire species. You created survivors who would do anything, absolutely anything, to prevent it from happening again. On a damaged space station near the neutral zone, Ambassador Choi Hana was finally rescued by a human strike. The war ended not with celebration but with exhaustion. Admiral Park Dae-ho stood in his office aboard the flagship, looking at reports that made his hand shake. The Council was destroyed. Every species that had attacked Earth was either extinct or reduced to primitive survivors hiding on damaged worlds. Humanity had won the war, but the cost was beyond calculation. Earth's population before the war had been 12 billion. Now it was 7 billion, 5 billion people dead, an entire generation erased. The scars on the planet would take centuries to heal. Cities that had stood for thousands of years were radioactive craters. Forests were ash. Oceans were contaminated. The sky itself was gray with smoke and debris. But Earth survived, and that was what mattered. The survivors would rebuild. They would remember. And they would ensure that no one ever threatened humanity again. The human fleet had suffered equally terrible losses. Before the war, Earth commanded nearly 3,000 warships. Now barely 800 remained operational. The rest were debris floating in space around Earth, around Vrinthax, around the Council Station, around a dozen other battlefields. Hundreds of thousands of crew members dead, including some of humanity's best officers and brightest minds. Captain Lee Taeyang was gone. Commander Bae Sujin was gone. Thousands of others whose names would be carved into memorial walls across human space. They had sacrificed everything to protect Earth, and now they would never see the peace their deaths had purchased. Director Kang Mirai submitted her final intelligence report. The Council's infrastructure was completely destroyed. Their shipyards were rubble. Their industrial centers were burning. Their agricultural worlds were poisoned. It would take them decades, maybe centuries, to rebuild even basic civilization, and they would do so knowing that humanity was watching, waiting, ready to respond to any threat with overwhelming force. The galaxy had changed. Species that once dominated now cowered in fear. Trade routes that had been stable for millennia were empty. Entire sectors of space were now dead zones, systems where the fighting had been so intense that nothing remained but debris and radiation. The Council's fall left a power vacuum that dozens of species rushed to fill, but none of them challenged humanity. Earth had proven what happened to species that threatened human survival. The lesson was written in ashes across a dozen worlds. 3 months after the war ended, Admiral Park Dae-ho stood trial before Earth's government. The charges were serious: crimes against sapient life, unauthorized use of weapons of mass destruction, genocide of multiple species. Some politicians called him a war criminal who had gone too far. Others called him the savior of humanity who did what was necessary. The trial was broadcast across human space. Everyone watched as the admiral who had saved Earth faced judgment for his actions. Park stood in the courtroom wearing his uniform, his face showing no emotion. He didn't defend himself. He didn't deny anything he had done. "I ordered the destruction of Council worlds," he said simply. "I authorized the use of weapons that killed trillions of civilians. I erased entire species from the galaxy. I did these things because the Council tried to exterminate us first. They gave us no choice. It was them or us, and I chose us. I will not apologize for keeping humanity alive." The courtroom was silent. The judges looked at each other uncomfortably. How do you condemn a man for saving your species? How do you punish someone for doing what everyone would have done in his position? After 3 days of deliberation, the verdict came back: not guilty. The judges ruled that Park had acted in defense of humanity during an existential crisis. His actions, while extreme, were justified by the circumstances. He was free to go. But Park didn't feel free. He resigned from the military immediately, refusing all honors and awards. He moved to a small house in the countryside, far from the cities and the memorials and the people who wanted to treat him as a hero. He knew what he had done. He knew the price he had paid, the piece of his soul he had given up to keep Earth safe. Lieutenant Shin Yubin took command of the reformed military. She was younger than most fleet commanders, but the war had aged her. She understood better than anyone what humanity had become during those dark months. Under her leadership, Earth's forces were reorganized with one purpose: ensure that no one ever threatened humanity again. Engineer Han Seok led the reconstruction effort. The Genesis bombs that had destroyed Council worlds were turned into terraforming tools. They could poison planets, but they could also heal them. Slowly, painfully, Earth began to recover. Green returned to the scorched continents. Rivers flowed again in radioactive valleys. Life found a way as it always did. Ambassador Oyunji became Earth's new representative to the galaxy. Her first task was to negotiate treaties with the species that had allied with humanity during the war. The Drauthi gained their independence from Kelthara rule. The Torvani received protection guarantees. The Helix were given access to human technology to help rebuild their damaged worlds. But these treaties came with a warning. Earth would help its allies, but any species that threatened humanity would face the same fate as the Council. There would be no second chances. No mercy, no restraint. The galaxy had seen what humans were capable of, and that knowledge would keep the peace better than any treaty. 50 years passed. Earth healed slowly, its scars fading but never fully disappearing. The generation that remembered the war grew old, their children and grandchildren knowing peace only through history books and memorial services. But humanity never forgot. They couldn't afford to. In Geneva, where the old United Nations headquarters once stood, a new memorial was built. It was a massive wall of black stone carved with billions of names. Every human who died in the war was listed there, from Admiral Park Dae-ho's parents to the children who died in the bombardment of New Seoul, to the soldiers who gave their lives in battle. At the top of the memorial, a single sentence was carved in letters 1 meter tall. Never again. Commander Yoon Ji-hye, now president of Earth's unified government, stood before that memorial on the 50th anniversary of the war's end. She was an old woman now, her hair white, her body bent by age and old injuries, but her eyes were still sharp, still watching for threats that might emerge from the darkness. Before her stood the newest class of military cadets, young men and women, who would protect humanity's future. They wore the same uniform she had worn decades ago, but their faces were unmarked by war. They had grown up in peace, protected by the sacrifices of the generation before them. The Council thought we were weak, Yoon told the cadets, her voice carrying across the memorial ground. They saw that we valued peace and cooperation. They watched us try to make friends with every species we met. They concluded that we were soft, that we would break easily under pressure. They were wrong. She gestured at the memorial wall behind her, at the billions of names carved in stone. These people paid the price for that mistake. 3 billion civilians murdered in the first attack, 2 billion more who died in the war that followed. They died because the Council feared what we might become. They died because aliens decided that humanity was too dangerous to be allowed to exist. The cadets listened in silence. They had heard stories about the war, but hearing it from someone who had lived through it was different. They could see the pain in their president's eyes, the memories that still haunted her after 50 years. We didn't start that war, Yoon continued. We didn't want it. We tried everything we could to avoid it. But when the Council attacked our home, when they tried to exterminate our species, we became something they never expected. We became the nightmare that monsters fear. She paused, looking at each cadet in turn. Remember this, all of you. Humanity doesn't start wars. We don't seek conflict. We don't want to fight. But when someone corners us, when someone threatens our families and our home, we become unstoppable. We use every weapon. We show no mercy. We fight until either we win or everything is destroyed. That's what makes us human. One cadet raised her hand. President Yoon, do you think we went too far? The Council only attacked one planet. We destroyed their entire civilization. Yoon's expression hardened. They came to Earth planning to exterminate us completely. They were going to sterilize our planet, kill every human alive, and erase our species from history. We survived only because we fought back harder than they expected. If we had shown restraint, if we had tried to be merciful, they would have regrouped and tried again. We had to destroy them completely to ensure our survival. Was it extreme? Yes. Was it necessary? Also yes. Among the cadets stood a young man named Park Min-jae. He was the grandson of Admiral Park Dae-ho, though few people knew that. His grandfather lived quietly in the countryside, rarely speaking about the war, haunted by the decisions he had made. Min-jae had visited him last week, had seen the old man staring out the window with dead eyes. Do you regret it? Min-jae had asked his grandfather. Everything you did during the war, Park Dae-ho had been silent for a long time before answering. Every day, he finally said, I dream about the worlds we destroyed, the civilians who died because of orders I gave, But I also dream about Earth burning, about humanity extinct, erased from the galaxy because we weren't willing to do what was necessary. I chose to save our species,